right. Well, thank you everybody for joining the third meeting of the Project Connect. We have an agenda here where mainly today we're going to be talking about developing an advocacy group, mainly the first couple steps that you would take. We'll talk about really being able to get CAPE to hold some weight and what Michigan went through in order to have CAPE get some weight within their state, hold some weight. And then we'll open it up to open floor. But before we get into talking about those topics, anybody that's on the chat, if there's anything that you've kind of reflected from last time, I can jot it down, or we can have a quick conversation. Okay. Well, then with that, I will share my screen. Okay, so I went down to Maryland, and Maryland already had an advocacy group called Maryland Adaptive Physical Education Consortium. And in my first couple of years down there, I saw the strength that this consortium had in bringing together adaptive physical education teachers, but also the connection that they had at the state educational level and what they were able to do. They had a voice at the table as to what was going on. For example, when the state was looking to develop a state IEP software, they came to the Maryland Adaptive Physical Education Consortium and asked for their input as to so that physical education was represented essentially correctly in the software. When they wanted to create documents, they came to Maryland Adaptive Physical Education Consortium. So there was a lot of strength in having a voice at the state level, but also bringing together adaptive physical education teachers so that teachers didn't feel like they were isolated on their own island, which unfortunately is occurring throughout our country. So with that, I came and I helped Virginia create their own adaptive physical education consortium or state group. And then I kind of supported New Jersey in creating NORS. And I also know that there are a bunch out there that are doing really well. I know that Michigan and California, two states to mention, have had a state group probably longer than the Maryland consortium and are just really strong. So with that, I kind of put this presentation together to advocate for the consortium, but also show how the consortium can bring together to strengthen voices. So as an individual, we can have an impact on our school community, our local community, local colleagues within my school building, and our students, but our voice as an individual can only go so far. And an individual that is trying to make an impact, one voice only goes so far. Makes sense. But as a collective group, we can have a larger voice, as I already shared in my introduction. Now, in creating a group, sometimes our group may be small, but those outside don't actually have to know how many people are part of your state group. So just having a name, just having social media presence can show strength or larger strength, greater strength than you may feel that you have in the few voices when you're getting started. Because gaining membership can take a little bit of time. Motivating people to join your state group can take some time. So some starting points is first identifying key people within your state. Dr. Michael Laughlin, who was with New Jersey, is now trying to create a group in Connecticut, has started to pull together some key people that can be stakeholders and part of this state consortium or state group. I keep saying state consortium or consortium. You can call it whatever um, your state chooses to call it. Um, but you may want to look to get the physical education program head, instructional specialists, if there's an adaptive physical education program head or educational specialist, physical education teachers, adaptive physical education teachers, and you may also look into community stakeholders such as Special Olympics. If Special Olympics is big in your state, you may reach out to the head of Special Olympics or other community organizations that support children in the adaptive physical activity world. That is completely up to the group that's putting this group together. But you want to empower your group with a lot of diverse voices. I would also say that the person who's in charge of physical education, adaptive physical education at the Department of Education level will be a key person. Uh, Getting them on board may be tough to do. You may start with having them come as a member, or um, you may share information with them because they may have so much on their plate that joining something may not be first on their agenda. But if it's something that's not emotionally impactful, it's very easy. Sure, their name could be part of it. You send them some information every once in a while. Maybe they will join, and as they see your group start to take more of the motor starts to go, then they start to see more value, and their voice will start to reach out to you. New Jersey, their state person is reaching out to them quite often, which is wonderful, since they are kind of brand new and just starting. So New Jersey has really taken off quite quickly, which is wonderful. Developing a Facebook group, like I mentioned before, or an X account, so you have social media presence, so that people don't forget you, that they are aware that you are there. You're sharing out information, and in the beginning, I would say your main goal should be to give information so that people see the value in what you are doing. There's another group, and I don't know that they're very active, but Portland had a state group. I reached out to them and asked them to join us, but nobody responded. So I don't know if Portland is really active, but their social media account is certainly active. And so just because their social media account is active, you think that their state group is still going. I don't know how many people are part of it. I don't know if they're actually active, but I see them certainly advocating on social media. And so just because they're doing that, it makes me think that, wow, they have a strong voice. Um, and so what I did in order to kind of build capacity very early on is I went and I looked at county public school directories and started to get some email addresses and to build up, and then did a mass email blind copying everybody, uh, and so that if they reply to all, they're not replying to everybody on that I sent this out to. But I found email addresses of stakeholders, sent it out, and asked them to join the state group. So sometimes you may have to do a little bit of research into understanding who's in charge of the physical education or adaptive physical education within your townships or your counties. The next thing I would do is create an email address. Again, if you have an email address that like maypecboard@gmail.com, then it's not Brad Weiner sending something out. It is this organization sending something out, and it holds more power. I don't know necessarily who's behind MAPEC, but I know, oh, this is a group, and I want to be part of a group because right now I feel like I'm alone. So those are a couple of things to start out with. Create, gather kind of your gather 3 to 5 people that will be your organizing group, and then those 3 to 5 people can do the research to kind of figure out the membership. Those 3 to 5 people can start to create a structure, maybe a website, uh, you know, kind of talk about what this is going to look like, figure out what we want to call this group. So for creating a website, typically what I have done, there are many different ways that you can create free websites. I typically have done a Google website, mainly because it's connected to a Google Drive where you can store your files. You can have a Google email pretty easily. Uh, it provides a lot of different avenues for you to have this, to start this group. Now, a Google website you can make live for free, but it's going to have a long URL. So I've gone to bit.ly.com or tinyurl.com to shorten the URL so that when I'm sending it out to individuals, it's easier to remember. Again, Google is something that I found works pretty well. Wix may be a free account also. And then making the first contact, writing the email that kind of expresses the rationale, the mission, um, who you are to this group of adaptive physical education teachers, physical education teachers who are looking for support. You may want to, in that email, indicate, issues that you're going to address, ways for them to communicate with you. Um, and then the focus is to motivate and gain support. The best way I find to gain support, not just having an agenda or having issues that you're going to address and a mission, but also providing a resource. So your first email, whether even it's the smallest thing, providing resources to this group, saying here are 3 websites that you can go to that you can get some information, or this is, maybe something that you created that you want to share, but motivate them to join. Make it very easy. Make it, you want to hit the rational side that, hey, there's a reason for that I want to join this, and this is what I'm getting from doing this. And there's no pay, because right now we don't have money to generate this. It's all volunteer. The members, we're not collecting. Typically, we don't collect money. I don't know about all state groups, but I wouldn't recommend, if you're starting, to be collecting money at first, because you want to gather a mass of people. And if they see that it's free, all I have to do is, fill out this form and I'm part of a membership. It's pretty easy for them to do so. And then eventually you're going to want to develop bylaws and operating codes. Um, what I, you could always come to me or Virginia Adaptive Physical Education Consortium, and we can support you by giving you the bylaws that you can adapt. It's easier if you take bylaws that have already been written, review them, kind of say, you know what, we don't like this, or we like this, or we want to change it like this. So versus starting from scratch. Also, if you've never written bylaws or operating codes, you may not know the language or how they're written out. So reaching out to an already established group to see, what are their structures, and if, they are willing to share those structures with you. Maybe down the road, we will get together as a group, those that are interested in creating, and start to talk about creating bylaws and what you want to be involved in there. And maybe another session on operating codes to help that along. But you certainly want to create a structure. And then that organizing group is going to want to think about annual goals. You may want to think about creating a brochure for yourself. The brochures may be outdated, the website, and then creating relationships with other organizations. This Project Connect is a great way for us to really create relationships with each other, but then also your state physical education organization, the universities. I would say as much as possible, if you have universities, make connections with them, invite those higher educational individuals to be part of the organizing committee, but also be part of the membership. And I mentioned that either. And then Heidi, who is in California, is very happy to support anyone by providing operating codes and bylaws. And again, California, I don't certainly has been way more established than I've been in this field. So I don't know how. Has it been 50 years, Heidi? 50 years? You're holding your 50th?
We held our 50th. We're going on 53.
Nicely done.
So, yeah.
I don't know anybody that is more established than California. So
it's quite. I can't even imagine trying to come up with like operating codes and bylaws and things like that just completely on your own. I've been a member of SCAPE for years now, and I still don't completely comprehend all of it. Thank goodness we have people who've been around for a long time that kind of get it. So if anyone's trying to get started with that, I'm happy to provide you with ours and then connect you with other people in California who really know the kind of the nuts and bolts of what's in them and why they're there and that kind of thing. So
yeah, maybe one of the meetings, we just invite, not we just invite, we invite everybody, but just people that want to create a state group. Maybe Heidi, we can run through the bylaws and talk through that, and another session on the operating codes, because that does help create that structure that will guide. The biggest thing when creating an organization is that you want this to last beyond you. You don't want to create it where it's only going to run if you are running it. And I think that's been my greatest anxiety. I guess when I became president of MAPAC, it was like, okay, I got to make sure that this continues. With Virginia, we're building it. We want to make sure that there's structure that when we are the current subgroup of board members are done, that other people are motivated to take over. So I think that's the big one, and having a structure certainly helps that. Rose says she's from Maine Adaptive PE Task Force, interested in bylaws and operating codes. So we can certainly share them out. I don't know, Heidi, if you want to email them to me at some point, and I can send that out in the email to the whole group, and I can send out Virginia's as well, so that Rose and other people can look through them, and then we could always get together and talk through them in depth. But yeah, I think the big thing is to build your membership, gain the motivation for people to want to join. And then I'm not going to go further on. This is year 2. Anybody that's starting doesn't need to worry about year 2. And I've shared this with the group. I could share it again in my next email. So everybody should have this presentation. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. Is there anybody that has any questions or wants to talk through any of that? Heidi, is there anything else that you may want to share?
I think just kind of emphasizing what you have already said, getting those key people who are really willing to put in the work and help support, that goes a long way. I know it can be difficult because everybody's, busy, but there are a lot of people that are very passionate in their field. I got to meet Brian in Colorado and meet a bunch of their amazing team members that, did everything that they've done in their state, which is just incredible. So I think, and those ties to your state organization, that can absolutely help as well, but it doesn't have to be there from the beginning. Our state council did not start that way either. They started kind of more independently and then eventually became involved in our state's SHAPE organization. So baby steps, definitely, um, and getting the people that are really willing to put in the work.
I appreciate you bringing up baby steps because I just presented a lot of information, and I think it is really important to mention because you can get easily frustrated if you feel like, wow, we're not making any impact. So certainly set, you know, achievable goals. And really, the first year, if you get 3 to 5 people together just talking, that's a win, right? So thank you for bringing that up, Heidi. Because yeah, sometimes talking to established programs, you can feel really overwhelmed real fast. Um, and then Brian says, I would suggest to look at your state Department of Education to see if there is something in place. Motor groups, beach group. We have the Colorado Department of Education Adaptive Physical Education Advocacy Council. We meet quarterly. So yeah, I mean, maybe there's already something that's established that you may not know about that you can reach out to your Department of Ed. And certainly if they don't know about it, you want to pull that person into whatever you're creating. And then Rose says, how to sustain the group's involvement when the group is small. So I think that if, like Heidi said, if you're making small gains and people feel the gains being made, see things occurring, like a website, something visual could be huge because now somebody can see something concrete. Creating a Gmail account, huge because now somebody can see that I'm receiving an email from this group. So creating something that is visual, making sure that the small group is feeling like they're progressing. You know, completing the development of bylaws feels wonderful. Sending out resources to a group of people feels great, and receiving that. And Brian just put in a website uh, for the Adaptive Physical Education Council. Thank you. And I'm going to copy that so that I can put that in my email to everybody else. Yeah. So again, depending on where you at, if you're not talking to anybody right now, trying to get together a group of 5 people. The last meeting that we had, we talked about having a tri-state. Ryan was indicating, I'm in Iowa, I don't know who to talk to. And then it was Tara who said, hey, I don't have anybody, let's connect. So, if you don't feel like you can create a strong group in one state and you're in the Midwest, maybe you create the tri-state. Michael thought that was a great idea. And he was saying, yeah, I'm having trouble getting Connecticut going on. Maybe I can connect with another state and we can be a tri-state. And so that works also. And then certainly staying connected with this Project Connect group. We'll continue to have these meetings. And so bring questions that you have or issues that you want addressed. Tony, go ahead.
Hey, so one of the things when we start doing the multi-state thing that is a question for me is if I put on an adaptive PE conference, do you all have examples of MOUs? Because if we're doing a multi-state thing and like people are then advocating within their state, say I put something in Washington and Oregon and we want to do like a Pacific Northwest, and everybody's advocating, there's a piece definitely for me in the history that I've been going through is like, yeah, like banding together is awesome. And then my years as president right now for SHAPE, there's a business aspect to it too.
Mhm.
And so, are there any examples of this? Is there precedence of the states banding together and MOUs for sharing some of the workload or the monetary piece, both in revenue and expenditures, um, to help advocate? Do you get what I'm saying, Brad? Like there's a business piece now that I'm learning. It's a learning curve for me, but I do see the benefit of joining together with different states. But that's something that's in my head right now.
So a couple different things. One, yeah, I think if we were doing a no, there's no precedence to multiple states getting together. So certainly they're going to have to work that out. Is there a business aspect? 100%. There's a business aspect related to SHAPE, every SHAPE or AFERD that's out there. In terms of states getting together, I would recommend states that are kind of neighboring each other versus, Seattle and Colorado trying to band together because you're on opposite sides and there are 100% different things going on. So I would think that states that are neighboring each other would be the most effective. And certainly when you are developing a group, these are conversations that you're going to have. And so when you are, if let's say Virginia Consortium wants to present in another state, Virginia Consortium, when they present, needs to go in there understanding what that state is presented. Now, we wouldn't be called Virginia Consortium. We may be the Tri-State Consortium. We're presenting with the understanding that the person that lives in that state, representing that state, is going to look at what we're presenting and be able to adjust the presentation to that state, is my thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. My piece right now is our revenue definitely comes from our conferences. I'm putting on an adaptive PE workshop. I'm going to be doing that workshop. But then I do want to support our states around us, but I just, as we get into the multiple states and surrounding state piece, I just want to put that thought or that seed out there of thinking of the business piece and how the MOUs happen. And this is all learning for me in the MOUs.
So I wrote an MOU when I was in Maryland that was with the Maryland, now SHAPE, they were Maryland AFERD at the time, to talk about the connection, because Maryland AFERD held some money that the consortium was able to use. Now, when we are getting started, I would tell people, do not worry about money. Don't worry about do things for free, start small. MAPEC was established. You don't want to jump into things. Now, you're in Seattle. You have to see where you are in Seattle and the connections that you have. But yeah, so we wrote an MOU. If I can find it, I'm happy to share the MOU with you. And the president of Maryland's AFERD and myself both signed the MOU, and we were able to put on different conferences. Now, Maryland was not multiple states. When you were talking about multiple states trying to make connections to the state AFERDs or state SHAPEs, yeah, there's a lot of conversation that needs to happen. Now, are you looking to kind of have your consortium directly aligned with your state organization, your state SHAPE or state AFERD?
That's the part right now that I find is hard. I feel like I've shouldered a lot of Washington, and
Yes,
I
you
want
have.
to transitioning out of that and build capacity. And I appreciate your presentation today, because I was like, oh, check. Yeah, but we need the big voices. I think the only way to the sustainability is what I'm trying to figure out, and like people matter. And so I think it needs to be part of our state organization. And I'm going to try to set it up that way. Like my thought, what I'm doing this year, I'm going to put on our 8-hour pre-conference adaptive PE workshop before our SHAPE conference. And the MOU I'm trying, and that's hard because I'm wearing multiple hats right now. But as our SHAPE president, I'm going to say for our pre-conference workshop, I'm going to put that on for free for me as a independent contractor. But we're splitting as an MOU, not MOU, but like part of the profits need to go into an adapted PE line item in our budget so that we can support the development of a consortium to pay people to get together and work, and like not for profit, but like to support that work. And so I'm going to use this year as a kickoff for that, with a couple Zoom meetings. But that's where I'm really learning. You need to have things in writing and have it like have it set
100%.
out. But I do think, and that's why I'm joining it. Let me know if I'm going down the wrong path. That I think it needs to be part of our SHAPE organization, because if Tony Bader goes away, we need sustainability, and it's going to do that through the SHAPE and in collaboration with NICP. That's my thought.
And that's what I was going to say. If Tony Bader does go away, that's a scary thing, right? And now you have two hats. So from your president hat, I would say that what you want to do is create a name to this other organization, and then you put in the line item that the Seattle SHAPE is going to give this organization, whatever you want to call it, Seattle Consortium, a certain amount of money. And then, but you need somebody on you can't be both people. So you're going to need to have somebody else on that other person that can sign that MOU that says this is an agreement. The Adaptive PE group says we are going to ensure that we put on a presentation that's going to be focused on adaptive physical education. So that we're going to, by doing this, we're going to be bringing more adaptive physical education teachers to Seattle SHAPE, and SHAPE is going to hold on to money and be able to help this consortium. So they're working in partnership.
Yeah,
Brian,
so it's Washington State, and I've already asked our State Department of Ed, our OSBI, to do that. And so that's where, it's hard. I hear you, Brad, and saying like we need another person on the other side, but getting people to step up, I think that's where all these states are like having a hard time getting people to step up. That's why they're asking the surrounding states. But yeah, Brian, I would love to hear what you have to add, because I know you made some progress. Am I the only one not hearing Brian?
I don't even.
I'm not hearing.
Sorry about that. Sorry about that. I had to clear my voice. I'm a little under the weather. So I was going to say, we in Colorado, like I put in the chat, have worked through the Colorado Department of Education, and we have an adaptive PE advisory council. We meet quarterly. I'm the adaptive PE specialist for the state. That's a paid position. You know, I bill them every 2 weeks, stuff that I do. But the thing that has really ramped up probably the last, I want to say since 2014, is that we have a budget through the State Department of Education that we are allocated so much every year for speakers. So like I know Heidi just was out in Colorado and at our state conference, and the money that we budgeted through the Department of Education helped Heidi come out. I know Brad's been on with webinars that we've done, and then you've probably seen on that website that I shared. But that's why I strongly recommend, every state has a department. Like we have an autism department at the state. We have speech. We have there's got to be a motor group. And we have an adaptive PE advisory. Our motor group is comprised of OTs and PTs, and they have different goals and objectives, what they're working on. We also write, and in the process of redoing it again, because their standards just changed here in Colorado, the adaptive PE it's called the Adaptive PE Guidance Document for Public Schools. You know, so Colorado is a unique state. There's no mandates. You can only provide guidance. I don't know if it's a local controlled state, so people in Denver can't tell people what to do in Durango, or because it's like the it seems like all the decisions are made that way. But back to what I was initially talking about, I would really highly recommend, doing some research and finding out what that person or who that person is or what that department is in your state, because they all have money and those are positions in the state that are helping in the land of special ed. So, I mean, we have an executive director of special ed, and then we have all these departments underneath. So the cool thing, we got another budget for this coming year, because we had to have it in by June 30th because of the fiscal year. We have another $5,000 this year to bring in guest speakers for our state conference and our Colorado Adaptive PE conference. It's not a lot, but it's better than nothing. And so that's just kind of how we've been doing it in Colorado. But it's I truly believe there's some position like that in every state.
Thank you, Brian. Yeah, that's certainly something that people can be looking into to get started. I'm going to pause this conversation. We will definitely come back to it. I think this was a good start to the conversation, allows people to start to think about their state and how they can start to get things rolling. You definitely have people that you can reach out to that's on this call, and we will get together again soon. I'm going to give the floor to Dr. Susanna Dillon, where she can discuss what Michigan did to support in giving some weight to CAPE.
Can you all hear me? Greetings from LaGuardia Airport. Sorry, I don't know what happened. Myself, Alex, Rich, and somebody else were over in a different Google link, and we waited till quarter after, and then we popped off, and Brad's like, no, we're here. I'm like, okay. Well, I'm somewhere else apparently. Let me share my screen if I can. So you can see. Is there a way to do this, Brad?
To share your screen? Are you on a phone or a computer?
I'm on a computer.
So there's a big
okay,
square with an arrow facing up. You click that, and then you can share your tab.
Okay. It's not going to let me.
It doesn't let you share?
No, because it's my work computer. Okay.
Is this something that you can email me?
Yeah, let me do that right now.
Let me just say, I appreciate you doing this in Google Meet because my district is getting rid of Zoom. And I am not used to using Google Meet. So I'm like, oh, perfect. I found a virtual background. I'm learning how to share my screen.
There are pluses
Okay,
I'm surprised that I'll look at my email. I'm surprised anybody's getting rid of Zoom. There are pluses and minuses, but there are pluses and minuses. Sometimes you can't, like Tony Bader, she was in her school last time and she couldn't get into our Zoom meeting from her school. So there are possibly some minuses to using
All right.
Google
Brad,
Meet.
I just sent that to your.
Yep, I'm going to share my screen.
Perfect. So I'll give you, as he's pulling that up, I was a part of the physical education, what are you spilling, Jack? Part of the physical education advisory committee for the state of Michigan. And then we also developed a adapted physical education advisory committee because we knew that there was stuff that was happening that wasn't aligned with what we needed it to be. So what we did, and Brad, if you want to scroll down just a little bit, is we started with the administrative rules, and we looked at the current administrative rules, and there's kind of a couple parts to it. The first part was we looked at what were the requirements for the language in regarding the IEP and the team, and we wanted to actually change some of the language. So if you look on the Rule 21, we actually asked that there be whether there we added language. We said whether the student has a need for placement in a special education teacher who is endorsed in a particular disability category, because that's what our state had for special ed areas, or the need for an adapted physical education teacher to be involved, because we had that add-on endorsement, but there was no way for us to flag it unless we put it there. They did not allow us to make that change, but it was part of what we requested. And the next piece of it was with regard to placement, and we asked them to look at the consideration of physical education and adding that language in there, and they wouldn't put that in either because they said, well, it's implied. And I said, well, implied or not, it's not happening. But where they did let us make changes, we're down in the requirements for individuals who were seeking teachers of physical education for students with disabilities, which is what they call our SP endorsement in the state of Michigan. And what they allowed us to do was to take the old language and revise it so that all of the content areas where people needed knowledge, we aligned to APINS. So if you look at what's on the left-hand side, and Brad, you'll probably have to scroll down a little bit. If you look at what's on the left-hand side, they needed 18 credit hours, and we changed that to 20, and then we aligned everything with APINS. So it was less of a special education focused credential and more of an adapted physical education credential. And then if you go all the way down to the bottom, we still maintained that they had to do a practicum component or a supervised teaching piece, but at the very end, there we go, and up in the yellow, up just a little bit. So the old language did not include any of this. The old language only included the information about adding it to a valid the SP endorsement to a valid Michigan teaching certificate. And what we said is, okay, all of these knowledge areas are aligned to APINS. So if somebody has taken the APINS exam and passed it and become a certified adapted physical educator, why can't they also be deemed to be a teacher of physical education for students requiring adapted physical education? And we changed that language so it's, that was the other piece we changed, teacher of physical education for students requiring adapted physical education. So they did accept that then. So you can still do the SP endorsement, but if you come in from another state that has no SP endorsement, but you've taken enough classes that you can sit for and take the national exam, then there's nothing that precludes you from being appropriately credentialed in the state of Michigan to add the or to provide adapted physical education services. And then the last bit of it that we did was in the role, and we did update the language in the role to really clarify that we're involved in assessment for determining eligibility for individuals into the program as well as out of the program, and that we are the folks who should be developing the programs and making recommendations with regard to placement. And we included the direct physical education services as well as consultative services to the general PE teachers. And that language is still intact to this day. They did make a couple of little tweaks here and there, but essentially it's the same thing. So the one thing I will say is when we took this forward to the state, we went first to the Office of Special Education and asked them, and they said, we would be in support of this, but you'll need to talk to the institutions of higher education that sit on the Special Education Advisory Committee. So we went to the Special Education Advisory Committee, the one that is from the Institutes of Higher Education, not the parent Special Ed Advisory Committee, and pitched it to them. And that's where we got the pushback on the IEP changes and the placement changes, but they were fully in support of the changes to what people had to have in order to earn the SP endorsement, and they were in support of us adding the CAPE as an alternative. It doesn't ever show up on their, we have like a directory, you Google somebody's name and it'll show that they have this credential or that credential. It never is going to show up there. It doesn't go on your teaching license, but the school districts can use that to hire you as an APE professional and to bill the state for your services if you have a CAPE or if you have the SP endorsement. So why they asked us to go to the institutions of higher education was because in all of those areas that we were saying these are the essential knowledges, those institutions of higher education that offered the SP endorsement had to be able to say, yes, our institution can still deliver on those areas of knowledge, and they could. So that's how we got that green lighted, and then it went up to the Office of Special Education, and then over to the Department of Education in general. But we had a sign on and a support from the special education institutions of higher education, and then from the Office of Special Education Services in general from the state of Michigan. So in general, those changes didn't take us probably more than 8 months from start to finish, but it took time to be very careful about the wordsmithing and what we put into there so that we weren't in conflict with federal law and or creating challenges for the institutions of higher education that currently had in place the SP endorsement program or the adapted PE endorsement program. And once we had this in place, just a side note for those of you who are in higher ed or attached to or adjacent to folks in higher ed, the second thing that we did after that was we created a plan of work for our institutions of higher education that basically was something that really only got used for advising the students, and then it was something that we would send to Tim when the students applied for the to sit for the APENS exam. So it was more of like a guidance document, but it also helped Tim really quickly and efficiently look at their transcript and say, okay, these are the classes that I'm looking for. These are the ones they've taken. These are the grades they got, etc. And that all got integrated together. So we made it easier for students who were in our graduate programs or who had graduated from our graduate programs but didn't have the full SP endorsement to sit for the APENS exam and get credentialed, or our master teachers to come back and take 1 or 2 classes and move forward. So that's kind of what we did in Michigan in a nutshell. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
May I make a PDF of this and send this out to the group? Is that okay?
Sure, I don't care.
Okay, so I will send this
I
out.
will say, yeah, when you send it out to the group, just let them know that it has been, the Michigan Administrative Rules for Special Ed have slightly been revised since then, but you can still see the APENS alignment in this. And the CAPE credential still counts.
Mhm.
Amanda, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. My question was just, so first of all, that's really awesome that you were able to get all that stuff moving and made that
The time
path.
was right. I'll put it that way. We had a
That's-
couple openings and good alignment and working relationship with the folks in special education at the time.
That was awesome. My question is so those districts that maybe don't have someone with those credentials or certifications, how do they get around then? What do they do? Do you see where I'm going? If they don't have someone with those credentials or with those certifications, how do
So
they?
Michigan's a state that requires it. So
Okay.
if you have a student who has adapted PE identified on their IEP, they have to have either the SP endorsement from the state or they have to have the CAPE. How
So
districts are getting around it is they're straight up just not offering it to their kids. They're saying you're going to general PE.
Okay, that was my question.
I will tell you, if they are a district that put adapted PE and they only had a general PE teacher providing those services, I know of one school district who got called out on the carpet for that. And as part of the I'm gonna throw air quotes around the punishment, part of the settlement with the parent said, I need all these teachers certified. So they sent back like 6 or 8 general PE teachers to get their SP endorsement because they had for a good period of time been marking adapted physical education and saying they were delivering the services, but it was a general PE teacher who was delivering the services. And in the state of Michigan, they are required to have an additional credential.
Okay, because in the state of Indiana, they say that anybody that is a general physical education license is certified to teach students with special needs for adapted physical education.
So this is, instead of you all going in and looking at this, you need to go look at what's in the language for general PE teachers, and you need to push for more integration of content for adapted.
Okay.
And so instead of it being 3 credits, because at one point in time in Indiana, you had Ron Davis and Katie
Mhm.
Stanton Nichols pushed together so that it was dual certification. And then I know things kind of dissipated as,
Yeah.
you know,
He was one
time
of
went
my
on.
he was my professor at Ball State in that because I had
Yeah.
a minor in adapted PE and he taught me all those things with adapted PE. But what I know is there are teachers that maybe got their license before that happened. Do you see what I'm saying? So those people are like, I don't have to train. What am I? You know what I mean? And so there's that loophole of people who are in the system now that maybe don't have any of that per se,
Yep.
but are being asked to teach.
So yeah, so I would look to work to increase instead of 3 credit hours, have it be 6 credit hours, or beef up the language so that the kids who are coming out in the next 10 to 15 years have more knowledge. But the other thing you might want to do is go to the to CASE in the state of Indiana, which is the Council of Administrators in Special Education, and explain to them what is the CAPE certification, and explain that it's quite easy for the teachers to get there in the state of Indiana, and see if you can build momentum to have school districts say, we're going to have somebody who has this credential in district. Their placement might be 80% general PE and only 20% adapted PE, and they might be the person that does all the evals and makes recommendations, and then serves in a consultative role to the other general PE teachers that are delivering the services, but like build capacity that way while you're also working to increase what the general PE teachers get.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for your input. I really appreciate it.
Sure. Tony?
Just to add, am I coming through? Okay. Just to add to that, we've been advocating for 10 plus years, and the compromise, and I'll say compromise that we've came to, and I love, Susanna, you're talking about the graduate level, and where our state, weren't you talking about that in the template that you just had? It was from the graduate level.
It's an add-on endorsement. It does not have to be completed at the graduate level.
Okay. Yeah. And that's where we were, like, in Washington, like it went back and forth so Amanda, what I would say is, like, we have it's called the Professional Education Standards Board. That's the group that I ended up sitting with. They're the ones that do all the endorsements in my state. And so they're separate from our Department of Education. And what we ended up settling on is a specialty endorsement, kind of like an add-on rather than a full endorsement, because a full endorsement, they have to do, it's called it's a test at the end, but it has to be through our legislation. We couldn't even use the CAPE. But with the specialty endorsement, we don't have to go that route. And it doesn't have to go through legislation, all this money. And so just really looking at it was a stepping stone up from the 3 credits to now a specialty endorsement. But I would look through your Professional Education Standards Board into that piece of the different types, because one of the things that we're looking at in the higher ed universities is not going through an actual university that you have to sign up to be one of their students, but through continuing credits. So that's another plus of how we're doing it, is that you don't have to pay at PLU that high price credit score because you're not technically a student at PLU. You're doing continuing education through them. And so there's all these loopholes, and it's a learning curve. But if you're looking at, and it sounds like you had foundation, what I'm learning, it's like, as Susanna said, like, I have a good relationship now with our special ed Department of Ed, but if that person leaves, and it's all about people, and being able to jump the hoops. So I would
not only the people that they'll open the door, but ultimately what you take forward has to work locally. So whatever you propose has to work inside your system. And then even if that other person leaves, you typically are on track because you've provided something that makes sense within your state or within your region or whatever. So yeah. Hey y'all, I hate to do this, but I have to go get on a flight. So, but I'm
Thank you
happy
so
at
much.
the next meeting if anybody has questions to loop back into those.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Safe travels.
Thanks.
All right. It is 6 o'clock and a majority of the people have left. I'm sure you all have to go. But I think we had a pretty good conversation that continues the work. So we will certainly get together, continue this conversation if you want, and certainly continue the conversation of starting an advocacy group within their states. Anybody have anything else that they'd like to share before we end? Well, and certainly thank you for your time. And since this is being recorded, I am sorry that there were 2 Google links. I will be more careful in the future to those that tried to attend, but we're trying the other links. So my apologies to that. Everybody be safe and we'll talk soon. Take care.
Brad, thank you for